So we have just gone through a lesson on how to identify terms. They're the math problems or numbers that fall between the plus and minus signs in an expression. And we practiced how we can simplify some of those more complex terms. And then once we get our terms all in the form of a number, we can then proceed and just do our addition and subtraction left to right. So we are adding on to that now. We're going to do more with order of operations, but our operations, our expressions are going to become even more complex because we are going to now incorporate the grouping symbols like parentheses and other grouping symbols into the math problems themselves. So the learning target is I can recognize when numbers and operations are grouped as one term in a numerical expression, so I can simplify numerical expressions following those proper order of operations. And I'll know I've got it when I get 100% on the assignment following the lesson. So before we can begin simplifying even more complex numerical expressions, we need to analyze those expressions a little bit and be able to still locate those important terms in that expression. So we're going to be learning about terms that have parentheses or brackets. Those are like parentheses, but they have squared corners around a math problem. So our parentheses or brackets are going to form a group around a specific piece or math problem in our expression. So example 1 has an 8 plus 7, the quantity 7 minus 4. The 7 minus 4 is in these parentheses called grouping symbols, minus 2. And in the last lesson, we were highlighting the pluses and minuses. And now we are not wanting to do that. For these complex equations, you're going to have to learn to identify those terms without that highlighting involved. So we circled the 8, that's a term. Now, whenever there are parentheses or brackets or grouping symbols around a math problem, it becomes one term. So the quantity 7 minus 4 is one term. So we circle the whole thing. Even though there's a minus sign in front of it, we're circling it. And then we have the minus 2, and that's one term. So there are 3 terms. The 8 is a term, the group 7 minus 4 is a term, and the group 2 is a term. So there is a minus sign in here. So basically our term has terms within it. We call those nested. But when we want to identify our terms to take care of before we start our addition and subtraction, the parentheses lump this group as one term. So if you see a group, you circle the whole group as one term. That is very key to being successful on order of operations. So we come over to this next example that's done for you. There's a plus, a minus, and a plus. We're not highlighting that though because it has the grouping symbols involved. Those parentheses right here and right here. It's got 2 sets in this problem. So we're just going to look at this. This reads 3 times the quantity 2 plus 6. So since the 3 is multiplication to this grouped piece, it is one term. Okay, the 3 is a piece, and the 2 plus 6 is a group that makes its own piece, and the 2 pieces together form one term. Then you have this minus sign, and you have a group 7 plus 3 that, because it's in a group, becomes one term. So it's a little more difficult when we have these pluses and minuses inside these parentheses to realize that's one group, one term. So we have to kind of slow down and rethink what we're going to circle here and that we're not going to highlight. So we have ultimately just 2 terms here. All right. So the first step that I want you to take is just to do the circling of the terms right now. So I want you to look at this expression, look for those grouping symbols because whatever's grouped is one lump term. Circle each term and then turn the video back on to make sure just on this example right here that you've circled the terms correctly. So 24 is a term. The group 6 plus 8 is one term. And 5 is a term. Okay, now that we've identified the terms, we need to figure out what to take care of. So we're just going to work left to right, looking at each term to see what we can do. Work each term left to right. 24 is just a number. There's nothing I can do more to make that any simpler. The group 6 plus 8 is 14. So that term turned into the number 14, and 5 remains itself. There's nothing to do. So we only had this parentheses to clean up here, so we're good to go. Now we have subtraction and addition, and we always go left to right. So we're going to do this step first, which is 10. I know you could probably add the 5 in your head and be done, but we're going to slow it down because our problems are going to become more complex. It's one operation at a time at this point. 10 plus 5 is 15. And you're done with that one. Okay, this next one, I want you to again circle each term. Turn the video back on when you're done circling to make sure you have that correct. All right, so you should have identified 2 as a term. The one lump group, 6 plus 4, because of those parentheses, those 2 get lumped as one group, one term. And the 7 minus 3 is one group, which is its own term, because it's inside these parentheses as well. So this is 3 terms. This one, ready to go, nothing to do. The 6 plus 4 has to be put into a simpler form, which is just 10. Replace it with its number 10. And the 7 minus 3 is just 4. Then you just work left to right. 2 plus 10, 12. Bring down your plus 4. Don't do it all at once. I know you can, but just wait. All at once, one at a time. And then 12 plus 4 is 16, and you're done. Okay, now we're growing this up to start to introduce what is going to look more like a 7th grade problem. We're still in the 6th grade world because in the 6th grade world, they only deal with the positive answers. You'll never have a negative answer in these problems you're dealing with right now till we get used to this process and make sure you have it. And then eventually we throw the integers into the mix. So let's work on getting these worked out so that we know how to handle the positive results. And once we get that, our integers will go a lot smoother. So step 1 is to circle each term like we've been doing. And then step 2, simplify the expression working left to right, one operation at a time. Now, when we circle these terms, this one's all been done for you. And we have a little bonus over here. It's called a checklist. Because when we get this complicated, expressions are getting more complicated, we still have to stick with the plan, which is circle the terms and clean them up. The cleanup on these is where it gets a little more complicated because we have more than one operation in a term. This reads 3 times the quantity 4 plus 6. So there's 2 operations. There's the addition here and the multiplication by 3. So we have 2 operations. Now we look at this next term that we circled, and it's 2 times 3 squared. Again, we have times and exponents, 2 operations in one term. So that's how it's going to start to get a little more complex. So what we have is this checklist. This tells you you always start when you're given an expression and you identify the terms, and any of the terms have more than one operation, like this one and this one, you need to run through the checklist to clean this up, and that will help you stick in the right order to clean it up to get the correct answer. So when I'm looking at this, grouping symbols is always what you're going to look for in your term first. Are there grouping symbols in this problem? Yes, there is. And inside the group is 6 plus 10. So we do that first, or 4 plus 6, sorry, which is 10. We do that first, and we bring the 3 down. Now that I've done the only operation inside the parentheses, I can drop them. So this is now 3 times 10. And then you go to the next term, and you look at the next term. Are there grouping symbols here? No. So we don't have to do anything here. We take the next thing we look for are exponents. Are there exponents in this problem? Yes, there are. It's not left to right. It's over here on the right. Your gut is going to want to tell you to do 2 times 3, but that is not correct. You have to clear the exponents. This reads 2 times 3 squared. You're doubling 3 squared. You're not doubling 3. You're doubling 3 squared. So you have to do your exponents before you can multiply that by 2. And 3 squared is 3 times 3. Not 3 times 2, 3 times 3, which is 9. That's where that 9 came out. So now we've whittled this down a little bit, but we still have to clean up both of these terms. They still have an operation we haven't done yet. And so we're going to do 3 times 10, which is 30, and 2 times 9, which is 18. Once we get those down to numbers, and the only thing left here is subtraction, we'll subtract and get our 12. So if your terms, just to summarize, these terms have 2 operations each in them. When you see more than one operation in a term you have to clean up, go through the checklist. First, see if there's grouping symbols like parentheses. And then if there are, do what's in that grouping symbol. Next, check to see if there's any exponents. If there are, take care of the exponents. And once you've done that, you're to this box right here. And if there's multiplication, division, you would work that left to right. So we'll see some more complicated ones here and just kind of get them under our belt. They're really not that complicated if you look at the terms themselves and take care of cleaning each one up before you add or subtract. That's at the bottom of our box. So that's always what we do last. Okay, so we're looking at this right here. I'm in the preview mode, aren't I? So I gotta go put that in there. And we're supposed to simplify these. It says use the checklist to simplify these terms with more than one operation. So when I'm looking at this right here, and I'm looking at this right here, they look very similar, but this has some grouping symbols that this one does not. And we've got to figure out, will it make a difference when we go ahead to simplify? So I'm putting the checklist over here. It was that colorful gem grouping, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract, left to right, left to right. So looking at this expression, it reads 3 times 4 squared. We're tripling 4 squared. This one reads 3 times 4. So we're multiplying 3 times 4, and then we're squaring that result. So let's do the math and see what happens. Will we get the same answer if we do this in a different order? This one, according to order of operations, we have 2 operations. We have multiplication and we have exponents. So there's 2 operations there. And when you use your checklist, we don't have any grouping symbols on this one. So we don't have to do that. Then we check for exponents. This is, oh, we have them. We have to do that first. Before we can multiply, we got to clear those exponents. So this is 3 times 4 times 4 is 16, not 8. Don't do 4 times 2, 4 times 4. Okay, now that I've cleared that, I look to see, do I have multiplication and division? What do I have here? Just multiplication. So 3 times 16 is 48. So I just simplify it out. When I look over here, it says, no, you're not going to do exponents first. So we go to our checklist, right? I'm going to erase everything. Let me bring that back. So the checklist says, oh, I keep doing that. I'm just not going to get rid of these arrows. I'm just going to draw them again. The checklist says you have grouping symbols in this one. You have to multiply the 3 times 4 first. Once I multiply, I can drop those grouping symbols, and that little square is waiting for me out here. Now I have to do 12 times 12. Well, 12 times 12 is 144. If you don't use your checklist and you think you can multiply these and then square, and that's equivalent to squaring first and multiplying second, it's not. You will not get the right answer. So it's so important that when you circle your terms, you're looking to see if there's more than one operation, you're going to your checklist to see how to work those 2 operations or 3 operations in the right order. You use this checklist. Always check for the grouping symbols. If there are none, look for exponents and work your way down the list. All right, this next one, 16 divided by 2 squared. So again, we're going to go to the checklist. Are there grouping symbols here? No. Okay. Go to the next thing. The next thing we check for, are there exponents? Oh, there sure are. It's 2 squared. So we're going to do that. And because we're not going left to right, we're not going to do 16 divided by 2. We're using our checklist when there's 2 operations. It's 16 divided by 4. Okay, so now we're good. What is 16 divided by 4? It's 4. So this yields the number 4, gives us the answer 4. Let's see what happens when we put those grouping symbols on that says, no, you're going to do the division before the exponents here, because grouping is first on your checklist, because we have two operations. We have division and exponents. So we're going to first do 16 divided by 2. That is 8. And the parentheses can drop because we've done all the operations inside that group. And the square is waiting for it. 8 squared, remember, means 8 times 8, which is 64. So it does make a difference what order you go in. This one demands the exponents before the division from the checklist. This one demands you divide first before the exponents because grouping comes ahead. So if you don't pay attention to your checklist and you just go 16 on this one, 16 divided by 2 is 8, and then you square it, you're not going to get the right answer. So you have to go to your checklist when you have more complex terms with more than one operation to clean them up. All right, so we're going to practice a bit together here with our little checklist up here because these are more complex. There's more than one operation in our terms. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure you can still identify the terms correctly. So circle each term because that'll help us hone in on what we need to clean up before we can add or subtract. So circle each term, turn the video back on to make sure you circled the right terms. So you should have circled the 3 times 2 squared. All that makes one term, right? And you also should have circled 2 times the quantity 3 plus 1. The 3 plus 1 is its own piece, and the 2 is part of that whole term. The 2 pieces make one term. Okay, now that we have that figured out, the next piece is to use our checklist to figure out how to clean up this right here. The minus sign is going to come down and we need to clean this up right here. We're going to do one operation at a time to clean this up and one operation to clean that up. It's not going to be done, but it'll be on its way to getting it ready to be subtracted. So the first thing you're going to do here is it's 3 times 2 squared. So we look to the checklist. In this term up there, are there grouping symbols? No, there's no parentheses or brackets. Are there exponents? Yes, 2 squared. So we're going to bring the 3 down because we're only going to do one operation at a time. That's 3 times 4. So the 2 squared turned into 4. Now we're going to look to this term and we're going to try to clean this up. Are there grouping symbols? Yes, 3 plus 1. So I'm going to bring the 2 times down because I haven't done that yet. I cleaned up inside here and I got 4, so I can drop those parentheses. So this is 2 times 4 now. Now I have this term right here. It's not ready to be subtracted yet because it's a multiplication problem. I need to multiply and get 12. And then this term right here, I need to multiply that and I get 8. Now that I have just simplified numbers, I can do my subtraction. 12 take away 8 is 4. And we've handled that more complex because of the number of operations in our terms, one at a time, staying organized to get the result of 4. Okay, I would like you to take the time to pause the video and circle each of the terms here to make sure you're circling the right pieces that have to be simplified before we can add and subtract these values together. Pause the video, circle the terms, turn it back on, see if you've got it. So hopefully you circled 30. That's its own term. And then the group 2 plus 3 squared, that's its own term. And then 2 times 8 divided by 4, that's its own term. Okay, now that you have the terms identified, I want you to come up with row 1. I want you to see what are you going to do to start the process of simplifying this expression. This has 2 operations and this also has 2 operations. So when you're simplifying, which operation are you going to do first to generate this first row here? Turn the video back on when you've done row 1 to make sure you've got it correct before you proceed. Okay, so looking at 30, it just comes down. Looking at the quantity 2 plus 3 squared, you got to go to the checklist. The checklist says, do you have grouping symbols? I do. 2 plus 3 is 5. Drop the parentheses once all the operations inside are complete, and the squared comes down. Then you have plus, and now you have multiplication and division. That's this block right here. And when you see that, you need to work left to right. So you look at that problem, multiplication is first. It's 2 times 8 first, and when you're done with that, you will then divide by 4. So we did the 2 times 8 to get the 16, and we brought the divide by 4 down. I'm not going to do it all in one lump. I'm going to do it separately. Okay, so I've got one operation cleared up here, one operation here, and I have the second operation to handle now. I know what order to do those because I'm looking at my checklist. Okay, now I have 30. I got to clean this term up. It's not 10. So if you have thinking 10, you're not on the right track. It's 5 times 5. That's 25. And then 16 divided by 4 is 4. 30 take away 25 is 5. Bring down your plus 4. Remember I said one operation at a time when you're cleaning things up. 5 plus 4 is 9. And then you have it. That's that funneling. That is no equal signs in any of these examples, right? We're just working our way, whittling it down. An expression, 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 answer. No equal signs going on. We're working vertically to funnel our steps in neat rows. Okay, so we're looking at this problem right here. It's a little different than some of the problems because we have this extra long fraction bar because we have an addition problem below it. We have exponents above it. So we're going to follow the process. We're going to figure out, circle each term. After we circle each term, then we're going to clean up some terms to get down to our final answer. So looking at this, when you see this fraction bar, it acts as a grouping symbol. It says, hey, you got something in the top and you got something in the bottom. And something in the top is not a number. And the something in the bottom is not just a number yet. They're math problems that need to be taken care of before you can divide. That is a division sign. So this reads 5 to the second power divided by 3 plus 2. So we're going to clean this one big term up. That's one big term. And then here's your other term. That's a simple 8. So looking at this, we're going to make sure that we take care of the top. We take care of the bottom. The fraction bar here is saying this is a group up top you got to deal with, and it's a piece of your term, and this group is in the bottom. It's a piece of your term. You got to take care of each of those groups before you can divide. So this would be 5 squared is 25. 3 plus 2 is 5. So we've taken care of those two operations, and there's a third one, which is the division. 3 operations in this single term. Plus 8, nothing to do there. We just bring it down. Now we do this. 25 divided by 5 is 5. And we bring down the plus 8 because you got to go one step at a time, even if you know that in your head. 5 plus 8 is 13. And you've got it whittled down. Now we're looking at this next problem. I want you to pause the video, circle what you think the terms are, then turn the video back on to see if you've got it. So you should have circled 2 times 4 to the second power minus 27 divided by 3 times 2. Okay, so I circled this as one term and I circled this as one term. If you didn't circle the terms correctly, analyze why those are considered one lump term and another lump term, 2 terms to this expression. Once you get that figured out, you're ready to go. So I want you to we're going to use the checklist up here. So when I'm looking at this first term, I see grouping symbols. And I'm like, I got to do grouping first. But when I look inside the parentheses, there's only a number. This grouping symbol is not here to form a little group here because there's no math inside to do this thing. The parentheses are here to say 2 times 4. So sometimes parentheses are there, but they're not really a grouping symbol. It's more there for the multiplication problem. So there's no grouping really. There's nothing to do inside these parentheses. So I check for exponents. Oh, there is an exponent, and it's 4 squared. It's not 2 squared and 4 squared. It's just 4 squared. So this is 2 times whatever 4 squared is. 4 times 4 is 16. So it can get a little complicated when they're sticking parentheses in to indicate just multiplication, not a grouping of some kind of operation going on inside. This reads 27 divided by 3 times 2. go up to my chart. It says multiply or divide. You got it. Since there's both, you work left to right. So it's divide first. 27 divided by 3 is 9. And I'm bringing the times 2 down. You might in your head go, well, that's 9 times 2, 18. I don't want to see the 18 here. I want to see one operation at a time. So we are slowing it down. Okay, now we still have to clean up this term and this term. Well, 16 times 2 is 32. And 9 times 2 is 18. Now we subtract. 32 take away 18 is 14. And you are done. That is in simplest form. We funneled one operation at a time, cleaning up each term as we went. Then finally subtracting, which is at the bottom of our chart, left to right. So when you're following the order of operations, if you have less complicated expressions to evaluate or simplify, those would be the expressions that have one operation in a term, or there's no operations in your terms. You just simply add or subtract left to right. If they have one operation in a term, you perform that one operation to clean the terms up that have it, and then you add, subtract left to right. If you have more than one operation in a term, the numerical expressions are getting more complex, then remember the grouping is first. Look for that first. If there are grouping symbols, do what's inside them to clean that up. Then look for any exponents in the terms you're handling. If there are exponents, clean that up. Finally, if your terms have any of the terms have multiplication and division in them, you work the multiplication and division left to right to clean it up, doing one at a time. Finally, if you've done the grouping, the exponents, and you've multiplied and divided and cleaned all your terms up, and all you have left is numbers that are being added or subtracted, you simply take care of the math left to right, one subtraction or addition at a time. So you're going to work on an assignment to practice these more basic all the way to the more complex problems. And just to get better practice and better at recognizing how to get to those answers following the proper order. Good luck.